What happens when one of Britain's most respected actors walks onto a morning talk show expecting a conversation about his life's work, only to be met with dismissive questions and thinly veiled insults? In just 28 seconds of one particular exchange, a beloved television host would reveal her true colors and turn a routine interview into an unforgettable disaster that ended with her guest walking off set. The studio lights were bright that morning. Ian McKellen settled into the chair across from Lorraine Kelly, ready to discuss his latest theater production. The panel sat nearby. Marcus, the show's regular entertainment correspondent, and Fiona, a lifestyle expert who appeared weekly. The atmosphere started friendly enough. Lorraine leaned forward with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So Ian, you're doing another Shakespeare play. Don't you think at your age you should be relaxing, enjoying retirement instead of prancing about on stage?" The studio went quiet. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ian paused, his expression measured. "I don't consider bringing literature to life prancing about, Lorraine. Acting is my passion. It's what I do." She waved her hand dismissively. Yes, but surely there are younger actors who could do it with more energy, more relevance to today's audiences." Fiona's eyes widened. She glanced at Marcus, who looked down at his notes. Ian remained calm, though his voice carried a slight edge. "Are you suggesting that age diminishes an actor's ability to connect with an audience?" Lorraine laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the air. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Theater is dying anyway. Nobody cares about these old plays anymore. They want Netflix, streaming, modern stuff, not dusty old Shakespeare." "Theater has survived for thousands of years," Ian replied, his tone still respectful but firmer. "It will outlast any streaming service." Marcus tried to intervene. "Actually, Lorraine, Ian's last production sold out every single night. The reviews were incredible." Lorraine shot him a look that could freeze water. "Marcus, I'm conducting this interview. Thank you." Marcus went silent, shrinking back into his chair. She turned back to Ian. "Let's talk about something people actually care about. Your personal life. You've been quite vocal about certain political issues. Don't you think celebrities should just stick to entertaining and leave the thinking to others?" Ian's eyebrows raised. "Leave the thinking to others? I wasn't aware that becoming an actor required surrendering one's right to have opinions." "Well, it's just that nobody really wants to hear actors talk about politics," Lorraine continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're there to perform, to make people laugh or cry, not to lecture them about how they should think." Fiona interjected gently. "Lorraine, I think what Ian has said about equality has been really important to a lot of people." "Fiona, did I ask for your input?" Lorraine snapped, not even looking at her. Fiona's face flushed red. Ian sat straighter. "Lorraine, I've spent my entire life using whatever platform I have to advocate for people who don't have a voice. I make no apologies for that." "Platform," Lorraine repeated mockingly. "You act in plays that 12 people see. That's not a platform. That's a hobby." The atmosphere in the studio had become toxic. The crew members exchanged glances. Marcus stared at his hands. 12 people, Ian said quietly. "I performed King Lear to a packed theater of 800 people just last week. Every single night for 2 months." Lorraine leaned back, crossing her arms. "And how many of them were actually awake by the end? Shakespeare is boring, Ian. Admit it. It's outdated. It's irrelevant. And frankly, so are the people who keep trying to force it down our throats." Marcus couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Lorraine, that's really unfair. Ian is a legend." "A legend of what?" Lorraine shot back. "Of putting audiences to sleep? Of pretending that old words on a page mean something in today's world?" Ian's face remained composed, but his voice carried steel. "Those old words have shaped everything you know. Every story you've ever watched on your beloved Netflix was influenced by Shakespeare. Every drama, every comedy, every human emotion ever put on screen owes something to those plays. Oh, please, Lorraine scoffed. You theater people are all the same. So pretentious. So convinced of your own importance. You think you're better than everyone else because you memorize some lines and wear costumes. I have never claimed to be better than anyone, Ian replied, but I do take pride in my craft. Something you clearly don't understand. Lorraine's face flushed. Excuse me, I've been on television for decades. I've interviewed thousands of people. I know what real work looks like. Reading questions off a card and interrupting your guests? Ian asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Is that what you consider real work? Fiona covered her mouth, eyes wide. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. Lorraine's voice rose. How dare you? I work harder in one morning than you do in a month of rehearsals. I'm here every single day, connecting with real people, talking about real issues, not hiding behind makeup and fancy costumes pretending to be someone else. I see, Ian said. So acting is hiding. Interesting perspective from someone who wears a different personality depending on which celebrity sits in that chair. The audience gasped. Some nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Lorraine stood up slightly, her face red. That is completely uncalled for. I am always myself. Always authentic. Authentic, Ian repeated. Is it authentic to invite someone onto your show just to insult them? To mock their profession? To suggest they're too old to do what they love? I'm just being honest, Lorraine shouted. Something you theater types wouldn't understand. You live in fantasy worlds. I live in reality. Marcus tried again. Maybe we should take a quick break and... We are not taking a break, Lorraine cut him off. Ian here wants to lecture me about authenticity. Let him finish. Ian stood up slowly, with dignity. I don't need to lecture you about anything, Lorraine. You've made your position quite clear. You believe theater is worthless. You believe actors are pretentious. You believe age makes someone irrelevant. You're entitled to those opinions. Sit down, Lorraine demanded. We're not done here. Actually, we are, Ian said calmly. He began removing his microphone. You can't just leave. Lorraine's voice pitched higher. This is my show. You don't walk out on me. Ian paused, looking directly at her. I've sat through your condescension. I've listened to you insult my profession, my age, and my life's work. I've watched you silence your own colleagues when they tried to defend me. I came here as your guest, not your punching bag. Fiona spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. Ian's right, Lorraine. This has been really uncomfortable. Nobody asked you, Fiona. Lorraine spun on her. If you can't handle a tough interview, maybe you shouldn't be on this panel. Tough interview? Marcus finally found his voice, standing up. This wasn't tough. It was cruel. There's a difference. Lorraine looked between her panelists, shock on her face. You're taking his side? Both of you? There are no sides, Ian said, still removing his microphone with careful, deliberate movements. There's simply respect, which you failed to show, not just to me, but to your own team. I made you, Lorraine shouted, abandoning any pretense of composure. Actors like you need shows like mine. You need the publicity. Ian placed the microphone on his chair. I've been acting for over 50 years. I've performed for royalty, won every major award in my field, and been knighted for my services to theater. I don't need anything from you. The simple statement landed like a bomb. The studio fell completely silent. Lorraine's mouth opened and closed. You arrogant. I'm arrogant? Ian's voice remained steady. I came here to talk about bringing joy to audiences. You turned it into an attack. You've spent this entire interview trying to diminish me, my work, and everything I care about. And when your own colleagues gently pushed back, you attacked them too. Get out then, Lorraine screamed. Leave. See if I care. You're not as important as you think you are. I never said I was important, Ian replied quietly. You're the one who keeps talking about importance, platforms, relevance. I just want to do good work and treat people with kindness. Something you might consider. Trying, he turned to Marcus and Fiona. Thank you both for speaking up. That took courage. Marcus nodded, looking relieved. Fiona smiled weakly. Lorraine sputtered, You can't. This is outrageous. I'm the host. This is my show. Then perhaps you should host it with more grace, Ian said. He began walking toward the exit. Don't you dare walk away from me. Lorraine's voice cracked. I'm talking to you. Ian stopped, turned back one last time. No, Lorraine, you've been talking at me. There's a difference. You've been talking at your guests, at your panelists, at your audience. Maybe that's why you're so obsessed with relevance and platforms. Because talking at people isn't the same as connecting with them. How dare you? Lorraine looked around wildly. Someone stop him. Security. But no one moved. The crew, the audience, everyone just watched. Marcus spoke up again, stronger this time. Let him go, Lorraine. He's right. Right about what? Lorraine demanded, whirling on him. About all of it, Marcus said simply. This wasn't an interview. It was an ambush. I've been on this show for 3 years, and I've never seen you treat a guest like this. Fiona nodded. It was really mean, Lorraine. Really unnecessarily mean. Lorraine looked betrayed. You're both fired. Pack your things. You can't fire us live on air, Marcus said, but he didn't sound scared anymore. He sounded tired. Ian watched this exchange from near the exit. This is what happens when you build everything on putting others down instead of lifting them up. Eventually, people stop accepting it. I don't put people down, Lorraine insisted. I ask hard questions. I'm a journalist. Hard questions, Ian said softly, are not the same as cruel statements. Asking me why I still act at my age isn't a question. It's an insult dressed up as curiosity. Calling theater dead isn't journalism. It's just mean. The audience began to murmur in agreement. Some people even started clapping. Lorraine heard it, and her face went pale. Stop that! This is not... You don't understand what happened here. We all understand perfectly, someone from the audience called out. Lorraine pointed at them. Quiet. This is my show, and you'll be removed. But the clapping grew louder. More people joined in. Ian gave a small, sad smile. They're not clapping for me leaving, Lorraine. They're acknowledging that they saw what happened. You can't rewrite this. Get out, Lorraine shrieked. Just get out. I'm going, Ian said gently. I wish you well, Lorraine. I genuinely do. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I don't need anything from you, she yelled after him. But Ian was already gone, walking through the studio doors with his head high. The studio remained in chaos. Lorraine stood alone at her desk, breathing hard, looking around at her panelists who wouldn't meet her eyes, at an audience that had turned against her, at crew members who were whispering among themselves. Marcus stood up slowly. I think I need some air. Sit down, Lorraine commanded, but her voice had lost its power. No, Marcus said simply. He walked off set too. Fiona hesitated, then followed him. Lorraine was left alone at her desk. The cameras were still rolling. The audience was still whispering. Everything had fallen apart. A producer's voice came through her earpiece. We need to go to commercial. Now. But Lorraine just stood there, staring at the empty chairs where her panelists had been, at the spot where Ian had sat before she'd driven him away. Lorraine, commercial, now, the producer repeated urgently. She finally seemed to hear. We'll be right back, she managed to say, her voice hollow. The moment the cameras cut, she sank into her chair. The studio buzzed with conversation. People were already pulling out their phones. This would be everywhere within minutes. One of the crew members approached cautiously. "Are you okay?" Lorraine didn't answer. She just stared at the empty set. In the green room, Ian was collecting his coat. Marcus and Fiona found him there. "We're so sorry," Fiona said immediately. "That was horrible. We should have said something sooner." Ian shook his head kindly. "You both spoke up when it mattered. That's what counts." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what got into her. She's never been like that before. Well, not that bad anyway." "Everyone has bad days," Ian said diplomatically. "Though that was quite spectacularly awful." Fiona laughed despite herself. "That's putting it mildly." She called Shakespeare boring and theater dead. On television. To Sir Ian McKellen. "The knighthood doesn't make my feelings more valid than anyone else's," Ian said. She would have been just as wrong saying those things to any actor. "But still," Marcus said, "the disrespect was unbelievable, and then she turned on us, too." Ian looked at them both seriously. "What will you do now?" They exchanged glances. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "She said we were fired." "She was angry," Ian said. "She might not have meant it." "She meant it," Fiona said quietly. "You saw her face. She meant every word." Ian considered this. "Then perhaps it's time for both of you to find a place where you're valued." "Easy for you to say," Marcus said, not unkindly. "You're Sir Ian McKellen. We're just panelists on a morning show." "You're people with integrity who stood up for what's right," Ian corrected. "That's worth far more than any job title." Back in the studio, Lorraine sat through the commercial break in silence. Her makeup artist tried to approach, but was waved away. The producer came down from the booth. "Lorraine, we need to talk about how to handle this when we come back." "Handle what?" she asked dully. "The situation. The walkout. We need damage control." Lorraine looked up at him. "He insulted me. He was rude. He walked out on my show." The producer shifted uncomfortably. "Lorraine, the footage is pretty clear. You started it. You kept going. You silenced your own panelists." "They were undermining me." "They were trying to help," the producer said carefully. "This could have been stopped at any point if you'd just eased up." "Eased up," Lorraine repeated flatly. "Yes, the Shakespeare comments, the age comments, telling him actors shouldn't have political opinions. It was all a bit much." Lorraine stood abruptly. "A bit much? I was doing my job. I was being provocative. That's what makes good television." "There's provocative and there's cruel," the producer said. "That crossed a line." She stared at him in disbelief. "You're taking his side too?" "There are no sides here, Lorraine. There's just what happened. And what happened is you attacked one of Britain's most beloved actors until he walked out. And then you threatened to fire your panelists for defending him." "Get out," Lorraine said coldly. "We're back in 30 seconds." "I said get out." The producer left, shaking his head. When the cameras came back on, Lorraine was alone at her desk. She forced a smile. "Welcome back. As you saw, Sir Ian McKellen has left us. Artistic differences, you might say." The audience was silent. No one was buying it. "Sometimes interviews get heated," she continued, her voice strained. "That's live television for you. Now, let's move on to our next segment." But the energy was gone. The show was over, even if it technically continued for another hour. In the green room, Ian was preparing to leave. Marcus and Fiona were still with him. "Thank you," Marcus said suddenly, "for what you said about integrity being worth more than job titles." Ian smiled. "I meant it. You'll both land on your feet. People with your courage always do." "What will you do now?" Fiona asked. Ian pulled on his coat. "I have a matinee performance this afternoon. King Lear. 800 seats. All sold out." He paused, a twinkle in his eye. "For 12 people, apparently." They all laughed. "Break a leg," Marcus said. "Thank you. and good luck to you both. Whatever comes next, I have a feeling it will be better than what you're leaving behind." As Ian McKellen walked out of the studio that morning, he carried himself with the same dignity he'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. He hadn't shouted, hadn't cursed, hadn't stooped to Lorraine's level. He'd simply stood up for himself and walked away, when staying would have meant accepting disrespect. Behind him, Lorraine Kelly sat at her desk, alone, trying to finish a show that had already fallen apart. Her panelists were gone. Her guest had left. Her audience was murmuring. And somewhere, footage of the entire disaster was already spreading across the internet. She'd wanted provocative television. She'd gotten it, just not in the way she'd intended. The lesson was simple, though Lorraine seemed in no state to learn it. You can't build yourself up by tearing others down. You can't demand respect while showing none. And you can't expect people to stay when you treat them as less than human. Ian had tried to tell her, in his quiet, dignified way. So had Marcus. So had Fiona. Even her own producer had tried. But some people need to learn the hard way. And as Ian settled into his dressing room later that afternoon, preparing to transform into King Lear, he thought about the morning's events. Not with anger, but with a kind of sad understanding. Lorraine Kelly had everything: a successful show, a platform, an audience, and she'd thrown it all away in 28 seconds of cruel, unnecessary comments, all because she couldn't resist putting someone down to make herself feel bigger. Ian applied his stage makeup carefully. Years of practice, making the movements automatic. Outside, he could hear the audience filing in. 800 people, just like he'd said. Not 12. Never 12. He smiled to himself. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Sometimes the best response is simply to walk away with your dignity intact. To refuse to participate in someone else's need to diminish you. The call came for places. Ian stood, adjusted his costume, and prepared to step onto the stage. To do what he loved. What he'd always loved. And in a television studio across town, Lorraine Kelly finished her show to lukewarm applause, already knowing that this day would define her career in ways she'd never intended. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She'd accused Ian of being irrelevant, of being past his prime, of putting audiences to sleep. But that afternoon, he performed to a standing ovation, and her show ended in awkward silence.